You are my everything, and I will adore you. Just think of this, all creation, with all creation I say now, you gotta get a good picture.
Do that one more time. All creation. Do it one more time.
Jesus, your name is power, bread and living water, such a marvelous mystery. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come. With all creation I sing, praise to the King of Kings. You are my everything, I will adore you.
With all creation, I will praise him. Go ahead, Will. And there's a reason for that. With some, it may be just ingratitude. It may be they're not awake to what he's done in their life. But there's a lack of praise upon the earth in the church right now because the church is under great oppression. And much of the church's praise comes kind of like Paul and Silas at the stocks in the prison, singing praises as they're tied up. Which they sang praises, and the angel of the Lord came down and set them free. But still, and I don't think if they're listening they would object to this, so I think about those things. I think about what I'm going to say being possibly objected to in heaven. Have you ever thought about that? I think Paul and Silas would admit that their praise was very weak. It was enough to get the job done. And it was in their heart to do it, and it was sincere. It was inspirational. The evidence of it is obvious. When's the last time you had an angel visit your praise? How about never that we could tell? See, there are angels about right now. We just don't feel them. We don't see them. But they're there.
Oh, maybe get a bigger roof.
They're standing around outside and they're guarding this place. And they're rejoicing that a small group of people has gathered together to praise their commander-in-chief, from whom they get all of their orders and commands. And we are blind to what they see, and they know we're blind to what they see, yet we still praise what we don't see. That's amazing. But here's when the heavens break loose. And the 24 elders which sat before God on their seats, on their thrones, fell upon their faces and worshiped God. What happened? First of all the saints are in heaven at this point. The 24 elders are on their thrones and all the saints are in heaven. And something happened that caused all of these guys to instantaneously break into praise and fall to the ground. What was it? It was this. And the seventh angel sounded, and there were great voices in heaven. God knows what that was. And they said, the kingdoms of this world are now the kingdoms of our God. And the kingdoms of our Lord and of his Christ. And he shall reign forever and ever. What happened? Well, I'll tell you what happened. The Lord got the kids out of the way so he could do business with the enemy. He pulled the kids out of the danger zone and went to battle and totally defeated the earth to such a degree that had never happened before, that the elders, the 4 and 20 elders sitting on their thrones, viewing the panoramic from heaven, they didn't say, wow, look at that. They didn't say, did you see that? They instantly fell on their faces and worshiped God. And they said, we give thee, O thanks, O Lord Almighty, which are and was and are to come, because you have taken unto you your great power. That's one of the songs we sang about tonight, was his power. And you are reigning, and you have reigned, it says, you have reigned. And the nations were angry, and your wrath is come in the time of the dead, and that they should be judged, and that you should give a reward to your servants, the prophets, and to the saints, and to them that fear your name, small and great, and should destroy them which destroyed the earth. And the temple of God was opened in heaven, and there was seen in his temple the holy ark of his testament. All these people are looking for the ark. I'll tell you where it's at. It's in heaven. It tells you where it's at. So give up the chase. And there were lightnings and voices and thunderings, earthquakes, and 98-pound hailstones firing, falling from heaven to destroy all the ungodly on the earth. And that brought praise unequaled before in creation.
Wow. Not politically correct there, is he?
I watched this car chase. It was actually a woman that was running from the highway patrol, and it was a really high-speed chase. And before it got into the high speed, somebody in the back seat bailed out. He didn't want any part of it. He bailed out, slid and rolled a little bit, got up. He was fine. The highway patrol chased this woman in this car, and it was on a county road. And as you're watching this, initially you think, wow, this car's pretty hot, because this cop car's having a hard time catching it. Wasn't the case. He's following until he finds the right place to nudge her. Because what they're doing now, they're not letting these high-speed chases go. When they get opportunity, they'll pull up right to the rear quarter panel and just nudge them, cause them to break traction and crash. And there was a car coming ahead, and so he knew he had to move quickly so that other car wasn't in danger. He could see the other car probably about a quarter of a mile down the road. Man, this cop car went, whoosh, caught this car in the head. Second, pulled up beside, just nudged it. Probably didn't even dent his fender. And that car broke traction and turned upside down, went into a telephone pole and crashed. But I thought, there is the glory of God. No longer are these people going to get away with it because the law enforcement's afraid to act. And she lived through it, and a couple more people in the car that was with her. But for what is our hope or joy or crown of rejoicing? Is it not you in the presence of Jesus Christ? Think about that statement. What is our hope, our joy as the apostles of God? What is it? What brings us joy? Is it not you? You, when you leave, we'll be rejoicing. We're not going to be crying and saying, oh, poor Martin. Where's Martin? Yeah, everybody feels sad that we won't be able to see you and tickle you and push you around a little bit. But we'll be rejoicing because you'll be in the presence of the Lord Jesus. And that is the joy of God's leaders, is that the saints, the people of God, are in the presence of Jesus Christ, which we're in the presence of Jesus Christ right now. We're in his presence. He's beholding our love and our faithfulness, our desire for him. We all have different little issues going on in our little highly important, unimportant. Well, my life's important. Yeah, I know. But he's beholding all of this. And it's kind of really comforting to know that every hour of every day, every minute of every day, in some place around the world, at all places, his people are gathering together in his name, speaking of the things of God and his word. Continually, all the time. You can't know it by turning on the news, but I'll tell you something. I don't know if you're on Facebook. I've been on Facebook, I don't know what, maybe 5 years, I don't know. Maybe a little longer. I have never seen as much Jesus stuff on Facebook in the last 6 months. I mean, in the last 5 years that I've seen the last 6 months.
YouTube too.
YouTube?
Yeah.
I mean, and look what has been loosed from the White House. Just because President Trump is, at the George Bush funeral, the comment was, and I noticed it, President Trump and his wife did not repeat the Apostles' Creed, the statement of faith. Did you notice? I don't know if you saw it. Well, the news media made a big thing about it. Your Christian president wouldn't follow through with this prayer of salvation or whatever. And I watched him, and he was in total judgment sitting there. He was not a happy camper, and he was not biting into all the accolades that were being said about President Trump. Some things may be true, whatever, but there's so much shrouded gray areas in President Trump or President Bush's life, and his father, and his the whole Yale, and I mean the whole thing, the oil deals, Saudi Arabia, Bin Laden, everything. There's such a shrouded mystery about all that stuff. You can't really feel good. It's confusing. You can look into his family and see a great family, and see people who love, and see there's, on the other side, there's legitimate things you can see that if he's as wicked as some of these people are saying he was, I don't know, it's kind of like the picture of Dorian Gray. You can look at a guy like Soros and you can see this guy's wickedness in his face. And most people that exercise wickedness to the degree they're saying he did, you can't hide that in your character. But it's unknown. It's really, there's no way of knowing. It's, at the very least, it's confusing. I'm not deciding one way or another. I don't have to. It's not my job. All I can say is there's something really, really dark and confusing about the man's history and the family life and all of that stuff. And when you look at the church he's part of, that Episcopal church, I mean, they've got women ministers, they've got, I'm not sure if they got gay people, but I know Methodists do, but there's a huge amount of just formality and worldly formality in that church. It's not in any way theocratically founded. It's not a theocratic government that church is under. You can say, well, neither is the Catholic Church. Well, the Catholic Church is more theocratic than the Episcopal Church. And I could spend some time and prove that, but I'm not gonna. It's just, all of this, even the Catholic Church is world religion. And you've got, and this is the confusion, and this is where praise, I think where praise gets stifled, is because things are not really clear. It's like the victories are few and far between, and the victories that exist are always shrouded in some kind of compromise or mystery. Just like, Trump got how many electoral votes? 296. 396. Okay, 306. Much more than needed. This was typically what you would say a landslide. But how much of a victory was it? Well, it was a victory for us in many ways, and for him, and for people who have right thinking. But the victory, there was a temporary praise and a temporary thanksgiving, but it was very short-lived. And it was shrouded in doubt and concern. And from the beginning, the mystery of collusion and all that stuff. That's pretty much the way all things are today. The only, and even the NFL, you watch these football games, and probably every game that we've watched that was won by 1 or 2 touchdowns, maybe the team we were rooting for won, but there was no real praise over the victory because there were at least 2 or 3 calls, raunchy calls made by the refs that advanced our position. You see what I'm saying? And you can't feel good about that. Even if your team wins, you can't feel good that, pass interference wasn't called when it should have been called, or they advanced the ball when they shouldn't have advanced it. You can't feel good about it. Yeah, your team won and you're thankful, but praise is still oppressed. Are you getting this? And that's us. Our praise is oppressed. Our praise is compromised by just doubt and by an unclear victory in our praise. It's unclear. And the Lord understands that.
Just a perfect example, I was sitting at breakfast this morning. I had a trailer on, so I parked my house crossways on all the parking spots. Which is fine, like 6 a.m.
Speak up a little.
So anyways, I parked my truck and trailer in IHOP. And I come and I sit down, and I saw 2 guys. Anyways, there ended up being 3 guys that I had seen once before. But, and they're like a group of pastors, or it's one head pastor and his 2 assistants, whatever. But I walk in and I sit down, and the 2 assistants were there before the main guy. Well, the main guy gets there, and he comes and sits down. He's got a Jesus spirit on, this tightly groomed blue, and he,
Yuppie beard.
yeah, and they all look out at my truck, because I'm parked crossways to the window, because I had a trailer on. So they look out at my truck, and I'm watching them, because I'm only 1 booth down, and there's nobody in between us, so I'm just sitting there, nothing to do, just looking right at them, like I'm looking at you. And they look out the window, but when they look out the window, it's like, who the hell's that out there? It's like, they're like looking at the truck, and I can see them talking amongst themselves, and the main guy, I don't know who it is. And then right then he looks up at me like that, and I'm just there, I'm like, I wanted to get up and walk over and say, is there a problem? It's like, did you want to talk to me about my truck or something? I mean, yeah, but when you talk about feeling oppressed.
Let me introduce myself.
Yeah, so I'm sitting there, and it's like, and they're sitting there talking about, I don't know, the fact that they don't like my truck or whatever. Anyways, this is like,
Then they're putting Jesus on.
yeah.
Well, it was like the Belgium, our Belgium program. We create a program for the Belgian TV people, and we advertise it, and we have several hundred people come. We feed them free barbecue, hamburgers, chips, water, do a concert, do a motorcycle jump through a wall of fire. I mean, it was probably it'd have to rank right up there as the best live performance of the year that those people have been to in Billings, probably. And the newspaper comes out that we're doing some kind of underhanded thing with our 501c3, which we're not, giving away free hamburgers as a way to make money. I haven't figured that one out yet, how that works. But it's like,
Just because they know the church does that.
yeah, well, it is. It's because, like Russ said, they know that whatever the church does in the way of free, there's always a hook at the end of the free that you're getting reeled in for some reason or another. But so it's like victories are compromised. There's no real free praise in the church. And I'm not discounting, I've been in some pretty good praise meetings. And some of you have too, where I would have said, well, this is a free praise meeting. This was great. And it was great. But in comparison to Revelation 11:16, where the 4 and 20 elders fall on their faces and worship God because the nations, the kingdoms of this world have now become the kingdoms of our Lord and Christ. That's a whole nother level. That's something that we have not and will not experience until that particular time. Because, and this is another mystery, praise, spiritual praise affects the atmosphere. Praise is a quality of life that energizes the atmosphere. Well, what do you mean? Well, okay, you won't notice it here, but Tonga's a good place. In the morning in Tonga, what do you wake up to?
People down in Kava.
Huh?
People down in Kava.
No.
Singing.
No, that's what you go to bed with. You go to bed hearing them sing. You wake up in the morning to the birds singing and the chickens, the roosters roosting, and you wake up to creation praising. That's what you wake up to. You can't sleep because the birds are so noisy. The trees are filled with birds and they're all chirping. They do it every morning. That's how they greet the sun. And there's a mystery to that. And so that energizes, I mean, we don't have that here because in the cities you wake up to horns honking and sound of vehicles and all of that. But there are places yet that you can, if you go to the right place, you'll wake up hearing creation praising the Lord. That's what the birds are doing. What?
It's kind of interesting you're talking about praise. When I was leaving the gym today, I went by the coffee shop on my way home.
And you praised him for the coffee.
No, I'm standing in line and I had on the Jump for Jesus shirt, dance logo. And this guy, this black guy sitting next to me, he says, no, wait a minute, he says, you're a Christian, he says, but you're a biker. And I said, no. He said, well, what's that, And so I talked to him about it, went through the whole thing, And it was just a really neat little encounter. He was on his way out the door, but he heard what I had to say. When I talked to him about the analogy of jump and everything, I didn't have time to go into any history. All I had time was the analogy of jump and what it is, and, what we do. And he looked at my shirt and he said, Jump for Jesus.net. He says, I'm going to look that up. Thanks. And he was on his way out the door, And I was just thinking, nothing much has happened today, but then Jesus entered my life.
Yeah.
And You know, and what a great thing that is when the Lord intercepts our life. I mean, it makes it worth living.
That's for sure.
And so I was talking to him about it on the way home, you know, and I just found myself just praising the Lord, you know, because of what he did, you know. And you know, and I was thinking about Christmas trees and, you know, the ornaments on the trees and everything. Well, Jesus is the ornament in our life.
Yeah.
And without him, we're pretty flat.
Flashes of lighting, I thought about that Jump for Jesus picture. I was on Facebook today and I saw this comment from Mary Onesimus, Onesimus' wife.
Oh,
She had been listening to our music
really?
on Facebook in Africa. So I didn't realize that she's like right there on Facebook too. So I responded back, not realize I'm actually in live time connecting with Africa. So she's telling me how thankful, we send, you know, you guys all give, and we all together send them money every month. This was Andrew, and she was just telling us how thankful she is for it. He's had malaria, I think, so he was pretty down now. And they came back to Kenya, I guess, and he's been getting treatment, so he's a lot better, but she really enjoyed the music. Their kids are little too, so she must be fairly young. I was asking her to see a picture, but their children are younger. But here I am talking about, you know, she kept saying, praise the Lord. I read that same scripture that Joe read recently about, is it Psalm 147? Yeah.
Well, you know, it's kind
The
of,
last one, right?
it's kind of interesting because there's praise is such a deep and involved work. You would think that your praise would increase with your success. But in reality, praise increases in your oppression and when you're oppressed. Because praise is an actual force and power that works for you. I began to notice after being in Grand Junction for a while, and after leaving the center and being settled in 27 Half Road House, I began to notice that there wasn't as much power in our meetings. And when we went to C&Half Road, the same thing. And then when we went to Sheridan, the power increased in our meetings. And then after we were there for a while, the power decreased. And I've also noticed that with us here, in the first couple of years, and maybe more than a couple of years, but there was more ministry from me to you going on, laying on of hands, prophesying, speaking over your lives, than there is now. And I can look at it in a negative light and say, well, we must be settled on our leads. We must be kind of withdrawn from our intensity or from our passion. And that could be, but really, you don't need a doctor when you're not sick. You don't need shots when you're not sick. You don't need the pads unless your heart stops. So the more violent ministry that goes on because there's a greater need. And this body is pretty healthy. Not that we don't have individual issues, but overall, This body's healthy because you have received the word. And you've received the spirit of the word. So that, and you're allowing that spirit to remain, which how do you know that the spirit of this ministry, which basically is righteous judgment, we can say. I mean, it's other things too, but we'll say righteous judgment is like making righteous judgments. That's kind of my motivational gifting as a prophet, okay? How do you know that you haven't kind of moved away from that spirit personally? How can you judge whether or not that spirit of judgment remains on you or you've kind of released it? Well, you know by whether or not you continue to judge yourself in what you do. If you're not judging yourself in what you do, then others have to judge you. Others have to speak into your life. So, and what do we usually do? We blame them. They're ruining my praise experience. When really, the truth is, you have removed yourself from judging yourself. And so that always comes up when we start failing. The Lord's faithful to have the body begins to come in and begin to speak some things. And so all it takes is humbling ourselves and saying, well, yeah, you know what? I should have seen that. Instead of letting my anger grow until it gets to a place where I say, okay, this is wrong. Get it in the beginning. So you know what? I don't need to do this. I recognize this spirit. And but we're relatively healthy because we're attempting to walk in the word and the spirit that Jesus is presenting to us and giving us. And that's just a good thing. And of course, remembering, how do we stay healthy? Well, we actively keep our passion for Jesus, and that's love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and soul, strength. So you're actively, consciously connected to Jesus. You're talking to him, and your affection is on him. You want him to know that you're there. And the other side is what? You love your brothers yourself. Well, what's that? You stay open and in communion with each other. And that doesn't mean you go and dump your burden on your sister. Well, so-and-so did this. What do you think about that? That's not communion. That's dumping. It's driving your little U-Haul to their front yard and dumping your garbage on them. So those two things, I mean, if we continue in those things, and Dan has given us this Dropbox, and it's a valuable thing. That way we can stay connected to the word that we receive, the word that we hear. Because obviously, I mean, I listen to it like a couple of times a week, and I always get things from it, even though I'm the one giving it. And it keeps the spirit going. It stirs you up. And not that the drill is memorizing what was said, or trying to continually stay up with everything that's being said so you don't forget something. That's not even the right way to do it, but just staying connected. And
So I'll say that praise is an attitude. I had that thought when you first started talking of how it's a force. And you start talking about, that it's related to how much oppression we're going through. And I know we talked about airplanes last time, but if the airplane is being oppressed, which way is your nose pointing? Right? If you're up clear blue skies and just coasting, your attitude is not. It's still an attitude thing.
yeah,
And just, I don't know, I've geeked out on creation, all of the amazing things. We don't even know, how baby turtles get warm in the sand and run out to the ocean, just all the stuff.
I know it. It's,
How water is the craziest substance on earth, and yet essential to all life. There's so many things. But in my opinion, the greatest creation that praise the Lord is an intelligent, self-aware, moral being throwing that all aside and saying, "Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord, Hosanna highest."
because he has a choice. And I say the birds and the bees don't have a choice. They've been put there by the Lord to demonstrate something that's needful for us. And they don't have a choice. It's like kind of go to the ant, you sluggard.
Yeah.
I was thinking last week, when I was a kid, up at the airport, wander around the airport, which was a dirt strip back then, and we'd be playing war, doing something, and I'd find an anthill, and they were all red ants. So I'd find an anthill and I'd start messing with them. Like I'm God. I'm this huge, overwhelming giant that appeared on their horizon, and I'm putting holes in their little colony, and with one swipe of my hand, I ruin what's taken them God knows how long to create.
Several lifetimes.
Yeah. And looking back on it, I felt really bad for the ants, because gosh, if I worked that hard and some big jerk come and just wipe my city out with a swipe of his hand, I'd be following that dude into his house and stinging him all night long, But it's kind of funny, but the ants, they can't do anything else. I mean, these little guys carry 4 or 5 times their own weight? I mean, it's just they're unbelievable.
In the same path every time.
Yeah. And I would,
It's so amazing to see them tall.
well, I used to follow these ants. So I'd sit down there and I'd watch an ant, and this ant would be coming back with something, probably I don't know what it was. It was probably, in some cases it was a pebble to add to the anthill. Now, one of the reasons I went to the anthill is because you could find arrowheads, actual Indian arrowheads in anthills. You can find them because these ants bring these arrowheads into and build their anthill on top of them. They use them as filler, and you can, not big arrowheads either, little ones, but they're definitely handmade. And so I'd watch this ant, maybe over there and the anthill's over here, and I'd watch him navigate his way to the anthill with this looked like white pebble on his back that totally covered him. Had to wait 3 times what he did, and he's just trucking, you know, finding a path. And then I'd put a stick in front of him and he'd have to go around, and I wasn't making his walk easy. But I was amazed by that kind of stuff, you know. And, but all creation shows forth the glory of God. We have a choice. We can choose to be an ant at work, an honest day's work for an honest dollar. That comes from the next voice you hear, in case you didn't know. If you haven't seen that, you need to see it. Great movie. Black and white, of course. But we can choose to be an ant at work and make sure we're doing the very best we can and give the very best we can. Or we can choose to be a half an ant or a sluggard or whatever. That's what makes praise even more acceptable to the Lord, because we have a choice. But there is an inspirational praise that exists when we need help and when we need power, and then an inspirational praise when we don't need help and we don't need power, but we're just praising him for his power. And that's kind of what I was.
I don't think God made a mistake in anything he created. I mean, there's got to be a message in it all.
Even mosquitoes, snakes. I don't know. No, they all have their place. Yeah. To make the ecosystem work, they all have their place. And of course, the majority of things that exist are things we can't see. That's scary.
That's why you can't kill the animal, because it seems to be.
Microscopic this and that. Okay, Andre, what profundity are you going to give us?
Are some animals a result of the fall?
No. Let's just put it like this. Only God has the power to create. The devil has the power to mutate. The devil has the power to change the likeness and eventually affect the genetic, the chemical balances and imbalances in creation. So, I mean, you could look in Africa and you could look at the hyena. Now those are devil beasts. If they're anything, they're devil beasts. You know, they're vicious. Yeah. Owls, whatever. And so I don't know, but creation exists in the Lord.
Don't tell any owl that sings like that praises the Lord outside there.
That's right, he sings to us at night.
Satan's power is restricted to, he can pervert. He perverts God's creation, but he doesn't have the power to create.
I'm just saying, you know, we praise him for the sunrise and the beautiful sunset and the thunderstorms and the, you know, newborn babies and the butterflies and rainbows and sparkly stuff. But we are going to praise him for his justice, his eternal righteousness.
Yeah.
And we don't even know. Like, I can testify that the Lord has been just and righteous in my life, and in most of your lives, and in his life, and in his life. I mean, we talk about a miracle, we talk about ants, talk about the guy who was, you know, OD on drugs, and is now praising the Lord. But when we get to heaven, we're going to see his eternal and cosmic justice in everything.
Yeah.
In all of humankind and all of creation, in the way the planets move, and in the way, George H.W. Bush lived his life. You know what I mean? Everything's gonna be apparent, and
Yeah.
we are gonna
Yeah.